Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show. Actually, it's the Freight Coach Podcast now. That's right. We rebranded that, you guys. See, I'm a normal human being, and I tend to overlook things at times. But, you guys, we are back. We are live. We are here to bring the realities of freight, business, trucking, all of that stuff. I'm going to have to come up with a new intro there because that one just used to roll off my tongue so well. But, I got a very special guest for you guys today. He's somebody who I've had the pleasure of knowing now for 4 years. Back in when I first started out doing sales consulting, he took a shot on me when I was unproven and young, when he was in a role of, an executive role at a large asset-based trucking company that's out there. We've stayed in contact over the years, and now he has since transitioned into an entrepreneur role and is building up his business right now. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Mr. Dave Abels to the show. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time today, man.
How's it going, Chris? Thanks for having me. I really look forward to talking today. Like you said, after 28 years, I jumped out of the trucking space. And probably like many others, I also jumped out in 2013 for a second and bought a True Value store. But then I got sucked back into that world. My wife took over the business. So it worked out well for us because then we were a dual income family, one from hardware, one from trucking. And then ultimately in 2021, I stepped away from working for the asset side and then consulting. And now I've purchased another True Value store, which actually was what they called a Hardware Hank. We converted it to True Value, and then recently just made an acquisition that's a large acquisition for us, about a $25 million a year business, and this is Tri-County Lumber here in Clearwater, Minnesota. And I think what you and I touched on earlier, and we'll elaborate on today, is the synergies. Business is business, folks, and the principles that I utilized for 28 years to ultimately become a CEO of a large carrier are the same principles I use here. And it all started as a dispatcher or a driver and then a dispatcher. And a lot of what we do here today are the principles in trucking and in brokerage. Like I mentioned to you, I'm essentially a broker, right? I broker building materials. So I source them as cheap as I can get them for a high quality, and then I move them on to contractors via my trucks. We get anywhere from 20 to 30 inbound semi-loads a day into our facility. We then break those down, ship them out to our people, to our contractors, which we have probably around 100 different contractors that are our customers. And we use ACDL drivers, BCDL drivers, and then just regular non-commercial drivers. So it's been a lot of fun. It's eye-opening. And I think what we'll elaborate on today, Chris, is, how anyone can do it, man. And that's the reality of it.
And
never give up.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the synergies between industry. I mean, because you're in trucking still at the end of the day, right? Like now you're
right.
just on,
right.
You own your own trucks. You have your own business that's going on now. You're out there delivering straight to job sites and stuff like that. And, what are some of those principles that you've noticed as a business owner coming in to this side, right? Like you had worked on the asset side and in the trucking side for, 20 some years. And now you've taken over a business and you started making some internal changes. So like, what have you seen across the board out there? Is it systems? Is it processes from a business development side?
So the business development side, I think, I bought a company that had been in business for about really 40 years with present ownership about 25 years. And just like a trucking company, you get into that company or get into their ways. We've been doing it this way for 20 years. This is the way we do it. Well, I'm going to bring a different touch to that, right? So they had a great contractor base. They had record years, year after year. So they didn't really go out and look for new opportunities. I'm a growth guy. I feel if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So I just told you we're going to do 25 million this year. You talk to me next year, that's going to be 35 million. Talk to me in 5 years, we're going to have this operation to $100 million. And how we do that is we seek out new opportunities, and then we foster growth within our existing opportunities. So we look for other avenues to service our existing customer. A great example in what we do is we deliver a lot of decking materials, right? Decks are big right now. They've got these new PVC type decking, last forever. So we deliver substructure. There's a brown and there's a green treat. Everybody's familiar with green treated wood, right? So it lasts outside. Well, we sell brown. So at the beginning of the time that I got here, anybody that wanted green couldn't get green from us. They had to get brown. So if you really, really wanted green, even though brown might be perceived as better, you ain't buying it from me. Well, guess what, Chris? Now I sell green and brown, right? I mean, I have to do what my customer needs done, right? I can't just say, hey, it's my way or the highway, right? And that same thing applies in trucking. You know, I started out in trucking. I spent my first 5 years in refrigerated. Then I moved into dry van. Then I moved into flatbed and heavy haul. And so as a broker, you might start out, I got a customer's got some van loads. 2 years later, you got a customer some flatbed loads. 3 years later, you're playing in the heavy haul space and reefer space and the dry van space. That's how you grow. And it's really just an attitude. It's like, no, I don't only know dry van, I know trucking. So let me take the principles I have from dry van and then learn what it is to do with the heavy haul or the flatbed. And let's try it and let's do it and let's get good at it.
Yeah.
And that's the key. One of the things that I preach every day is service. We gained 2 new contractors this week. It was no different than in trucking. All right. So here's the scenario. I have a guy that worked for a different yard. He's now one of my yard guys. He gives me a call. He says, Dave, there's a contractor at my old yard. He's upset because the delivery driver today was late, had some damaged product, and then copped an attitude to him. So immediately I use this as an example to talk to my drivers and explain to them, which they already knew, hey guys, you're the face of the company, man. You are the person that contractor sees. He doesn't see me here in my office or out there on the showroom floor. He sees you guys. So understand this. He's got crews that are there. It's important you're on time. If you're not on time, there's a bunch of gentlemen standing around that can't build anything because they got no materials. If you get there and you've got a little bit of a problem, don't cop an attitude with them. Kill them with kindness. Make a call to the office. Let's fix that. Let's give them a solution. That's what sets us apart from the competition. Same thing in trucking. And how we're going to get this guy, right? At some point, I'm going to call to a shipper, and he's going to have somebody that missed a load that day. And by God, he's going to give me a shot because I happened to call that day. Had I not called, he wouldn't give that load to me. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, you know, you're bringing up so many good points. I got to think of what direction I want to run with it here. But, you know, you're talking about how you guys are bringing in, you know, because I think from a business development standpoint, a lot of times sales reps are only thinking about how it affects them personally, right? Like they don't think down the supply chain, right? And that's one thing that I'm working on training up my guys on all the time, because it's like when we're cold calling people, for example, I'm not asking to be added to their RFP. I'm not asking to bid on any of their lanes. I'm going in to try and find out a little bit more about their operation. I'm calling to introduce myself. This is what we specialize in. And, you know, I see that you guys do this because like you were talking about, you know, you guys have trucks coming in every single day of product from your guys' suppliers. And then if those trucks are late, then your outbound trucks get late to your contractors and everything else. So I want to point that out is people need to keep that into consideration as you're going in prospecting, because it's like, if you were to call Dave and you don't know that, you know, hey, we're supplier routed, our suppliers take care of all of our inbound freight, and then we have our own trucks that go out. But if those supplier trucks are late, then our job sites are late, and then our contractors are going to be pissed at us, and then they're going to be looking at the next lumber yard down the street. So it's like, I don't think that a lot of people see that there is competition in every single side of this, because it's like, one thing I like to deliver is hey, we want to make sure your customers, when I'm cold calling somebody, I want them to know that, hey, we're keeping your customers' best interests in mind here as well, because we know the trickle down effect. You're not just my customer, excuse me. Your customer is my customer as well. And I have to treat them as such. When I'm calling these receivers, I have to be prompt. I have to be clear in my communication. I have to double check information, because I'm a direct reflection of my customer who I initially prospected.
Correct. And it's critical because, to your point, we are waiting for that truck to get here many times. I got whatever, 1.5 million in inventory here that's already here, but you can imagine in building materials, use decking as an example, there's 50 colors. I don't have all 50 colors in stock. So if Chris you want an antique white for your house, and I only stock 25 other colors, I'm going to be antique white, come into me, and then I'm going to transfer. You.
I'm losing you here, Dave. It's breaking up on my end. Oh. All right.
Refrigerators, right? If I don't show up with that refrigerator load, chances are Lowe's has some other refrigerators they can sell that day, and they're not going to unload it for a day or two. But FedEx is an example. If you miss a FedEx delivery, there may be 500, 5,000 different deliveries or packages in that trailer. So you've now disrupted the deliveries for literally could be thousands of different customers. And I found that out the hard way. We had a big FedEx failure one time. I had to fly in and meet with FedEx. And you know, I thought I was a smart guy, but all of a sudden the light switch went on. No shit. That's not just a single truckload of refrigerators that's not going to get unloaded for 4 days. There's a person waiting to unload that immediately, to get it onto an airplane or to get it onto a transfer truck, so that everybody who paid for Amazon next day gets their next day product. If I screw this up, there's hundreds of people that are disrupted. We can't do that. Live by what you say you're going to do. And if you're going to say you're going to do it, do it. From that point on, we ran the next 365 days for that customer flawlessly. We ended up being the carrier of the year that year. But it took an eye opener for me to really understand how different that freight was than my normal dry van, drop and hook, pick it up when you want, deliver it when you want freight.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you know, what's one thing that, you know, from your perspective right now, because I mean, I'm sure you guys undoubtedly get cold called or you guys get solicited, you know, and you're out there trying to solicit business as well on your part. What do you think most people don't understand about the supply chain as they're trying to go out there and develop new customers?
I think that, I don't know, there's an education that has to happen. And I think it starts in the beginning, right? You don't know anything. You make cold calls, you leave voicemails. I always listen to my voicemails, right? So at first I wasn't getting people. Then I would listen to my voicemails and I would see, did that even make sense? Would somebody call you back from that voicemail? So then I got better at voicemails. And by God, a month or two later, people would start to call me back. But moral of that story is you have to have something that is of value to whomever you're calling, right? If you don't have a good value prop, you can leave the longest and coolest voicemail ever. But if you're just talking bullshit, nobody's ever going to call you back. So when you're making a cold call, if you get a live person on the phone, don't give them your 30-minute elevator speech or your 30-second elevator speech. Listen, talk to them, pick their brain, ask them what their pain points are, learn a little bit about them. I always research people too, and maybe I'm a little OCD, but before I made cold calls, I'd already went through their websites. I'd already went through everything I could figure out, LinkedIn, figured out who the players were, where those players came from. Some of that's critical. If at some point our paths might have crossed 10 years ago, even if we weren't working directly together, but we were at the same company, that's a talking point. So it's not just, I want to talk to you about a load and can I pick it up today? It's understanding, building a relationship, creating a value proposition so that they actually pick up the phone when you do call.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's something that we administer or we train upon that, you know, all the time is, you know, when I'm out there, I would rather make less calls in a day, but be more prepared for those calls than just dial for the sake of dialing. And I see that a lot, right? Because it's like, I get it. Most people look at their sales reps as, you know, essentially you're a dead expense until you start generating revenue. Right. You know, you're a negative on the P&L, and they don't invest in quality training for them. I think it's very apparent out there because otherwise it's like, you know, and I see this, fortunately, I'm very well connected inside of the shipper community. That doesn't mean that they all work with me, but they all listen to the show. Some of them come on the show to answer questions for people. Right. And it's like, that's the number one thing is it's like, you guys are not prepared when we answer, you know? And it's like, you're essentially interrupting somebody in the middle of their day and you don't even know what they do. You know, like you literally don't even know that Dave Abels has lumber. You know, you're like, hey man, I can get your reefer trucks, you know, and it's just stuff like that. You're instantly putting off and you're never going to get a second chance at that. I truly feel that way. Now they might not remember you in a couple of months. You might be able to dial them back and have a different conversation. But I think like you got to train your people up right? You got to train your people up. What are your capabilities? Like us, we're a full truckload broker at the end of the day. Yes, we can do drayage if you need us to, but you have to be an existing customer. I'm not going out there and cold calling to do just LTL freight or anything like that. I'm a full truckload guy. And then if our customer comes to us with any ancillary projects and it isn't inside of the full truckload mode, we're going to look into that and we'll do that for them. And I think because it's like, that's our strengths, that's our capabilities. Anything that comes after the fact, yeah, we'll look into it. I've been doing this long enough where I can confidently say that, right? If a customer comes to me with LTL, I'll be just fine. I can do LTL. If a customer comes to me with drayage, I can do that for you. I've been doing this long enough. I know what I'm doing out there from that aspect. But I think a lot of people early on, they're just calling for the sake of calling. They have no core competencies behind what they can do. They have no intent behind, I just need to get revenue.
You're exactly right. And people cold call me all the time looking for what you described, whether they think they got a reefer or a van. Here's a good example. I typically never use anybody besides my own trucks. The other day, I had a situation where we had this load in Wisconsin that went to Grand Marais, Minnesota, a little outside of our bailiwick. So I reached out and I called you right now. To your point and what you just described, this isn't exactly what you do every day. But you knew enough to ask me questions. All right, Dave, does it need a Moffett? A Moffett, guys, is the little forklift that goes on the back of the truck that would then unload it, because we're going to a job site. That job site doesn't have a forklift. So you started digging in and saying, okay, could a straight truck do this? Could it not? How long do I have to be? Do you have to have a Moffett? Do you have to have no Moffett? So you knew the questions to ask. But the cold calls I get and why I typically tell them that I've got nothing for them is because they don't even have any understanding of what it is I do. And 90 times out of 100, they're not going to have the right equipment for me anyway. So I don't even spend the time, not because I don't like them or appreciate the fact they called, but I don't got time to waste, right? I'm a very busy man. I'm the CEO of 2 companies, and I've got better things to do than talk to somebody with a reefer when I've got a load of sticks that goes to a job site, right? Yeah. I mean, but you did a really good job with that. And and again, now people, this doesn't mean start cold calling me and trying to help out, because rarely do I ever have anything. And to be quite honest with you, when I do have something, I'm going to call Chris. Chris is going to get it brokered for me. That way I don't have to think about it. Right. So, but the synergies between the 2 businesses, and back to what we were talking about, have a value prop, man. Know what you're talking about. Ask questions. Do your research before you call. I get it. And I've been in those environments where
I'm losing you again, Dave. You're kind of cutting out there. Oh, he'll come back here in a second, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, here we go. Dave, I don't know if you can hear me at all, but your internet's dropping there. Let's see. Good morning, Carla. I'm going to try and fill the void here until his computer comes back on. But no, as you can see here, he just dropped off here. I'm sure he'll jump back on here in a second. But as you guys can see, that's an individual who has freight. Yes, they organize a lot of it on their own, but hearing what he's saying there, his talking points, his pain points, and everything else, like, this is applicable to every organization that's out there that you guys are going to be prospecting. From my perspective, it's here he comes back on. Right? Oh, you there, Dave?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
It's I think it was just an internet issue on your part there. It looks like you just kind of dropped off the screen. So no, I mean we're all good there. But with what you were saying though, about having that value proposition, in like the synergies between what you're doing now and inside of transportation. And, I think that business development is business development at the end of the day. I'm actually reading, I know this guy gets a lot of crap out there for, his personal choices, but I'm reading Jordan Belfort's book, The Way of the Wolf. And I am, because he talks about the straight line selling system. And, again, I'm always trying to think of different ways, because I don't have it all figured out. But I know that, frankly, you there's so many synergies between what you're selling, whether it's lumber, whether you're selling to a contractor, whether I'm selling to a manufacturer, or, whether you're selling supplements at a nutrition store, whatever it is, there's some key identifying factors on why people are going to want to work with you. And I think, a lot of it is, do you know what you're actually doing? I think that's a very big thing, because you can't really bullshit a bullshitter at the end of the day. And what energy are you bringing to the table? Are you actually excited about the fact that you're calling them, or are you mundane and everything else? So like, what are you noticing out there as you're building up these companies?
Well, and like, I don't profess to be an expert and truly in lumber, right? But I'm an expert in sales, and I'm an expert in people and customer service. So what I see out there today is that things have changed over the last few years. I would also tell you that I think there's more opportunity right now than people perceive. People got beat down, right? They made all those calls for the last few years. They're getting the door slammed in their face. So a certain percentage of those people gave up. And that's where guys like Chris, you and I don't ever give up, man. I don't care what it takes to grow. We're going to grow, and we're going to call as many people, or go visit as many people, or attend as many events as we need to attend to get that growth. And that's what I would tell people. There's, keep trying, keep plugging away, keep trying new things, and the market's going to change, right? This is a longer slump than probably even in my career that I saw. And I've been through a few of the big recessions in trucking. But it's going to turn, and we're going to see things change with the political climate, the interest rates. I mean, so like, think about me. I'm on the building material side. Trucking is subjective to building material trends, right? Housing starts, things like that. Interest rates are going to start to fall. They went down again the other day on the mortgage rates back into the mid sixes, which we might think is high considering that we just came out of COVID, but a 6% mortgage rate is not high, historically speaking, other than through 2020 to 2022. That would be a normal rate, but we all think it's horrible now. So I think that that's the key, is don't give up, protect your business. I set this business up much like you did, Chris. I can ebb and flow with the market, right? So if we get a bunch of new opportunities, I add. If the things start to slow, I subtract. And so I'm always profitable, right? I'm never going to not be, because I know when to react and react early. But I think that the biggest thing I want the youth to understand in this business, don't give up. It's a great industry. You know how I bought this lumberyard? 28 years in trucking, working my way from a driver to a C-level guy, put me in a financial position to be able to invest millions of dollars. And I did that because I was once a driver that wanted to do more for himself.
Yeah. I think that's the key though, because it's like and one of the main driving factors behind why I kind of changed the structure of the show up, and I just went to these live little 30-minute shows, because I've been doing the live show for a while, but I was more breaking down industry headlines a lot, Dave. And I'm like, I was so sick and tired of seeing all these clickbait headlines from people who have never started a business, or they're just, it was never geared towards, okay, well, this is going on, but what can I do? Right. Like that massive side of a lot of these topics of conversation are always conveniently left out, because they don't know, and their natural defense is always, well, it's not my job. It's my job to report on the news. No, 99% of your readers are like, okay, well, what do I do with this information? I got bills to pay. Like, I literally have like I mentioned yesterday in my live show, I have every dollar I've ever made in my entire life wrapped up into all of this.
Me too, brother. Everything.
It's going to work. But like, there's no fucking plan B for me, man. And and so it's like, when I see a lot of this information out there, I'm like, that's not applicable to me, or the 99% of the people who watch the show that are hardworking men and women who are like, I got a family to feed. Okay, the market's up, the market's down. Okay. And like, you can't lose sight of this, because like, I think so many people, I personally think, Dave, it's never been easier to win. It's not that it's going to be simple, and it's not like it's going to be a walk in the park, but I truly feel like it's never been easier to win than right now, because so many people have their feet up. They're waiting, right? They're like, oh, If Trump gets elected, everything's going to be great. Or, oh, if Kamala gets elected, everything's going to be great. They're waiting for that. And that's their problem. And that's what most people don't see. They're waiting for something to happen before they take action. But what they don't realize is there are people out there that are absolute sharks who don't wait for anything. They create their own market. And if you've ever heard me say create your own freight market, that's what I'm alluding to. You cannot pay attention to the macro level because, frankly, the macro level of the freight industry really only affects the publicly traded companies. All right. Harsh reality, you guys. The publicly traded companies, they're affected more because their stock market or their stock price is affected by that. That has nothing to do with me, who is out there trying to develop a customer base. I have to hit my marks every single day, no matter what. Oh, I think you froze up there again, Dave. That was I feel it. All right. I think what we will have to do here, ladies and gentlemen, is we're gonna end the stream. I'll have Dave come back on the show. Dave's somebody who I have a lot of respect for, and we're just having a little bit of technical difficulties. But again, you guys, this is the reality of business and life at the end of the day. But we will come back. As Nick says, share the show, you guys. If you guys got value in what you heard today, subscribe it out there, share it out there. I got another shipper coming on the show tomorrow who's going to answer your sales or operations related questions. So if you guys have any of them that you want answered, DM me, send them over. I will get them answered live on the show. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.